showed. Actually, you know what? At this point, I'm going to pass the floor over to Ms. Van den Velde.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. And I'm going to go back to the theme of my question. I asked the minister about elections in Venezuela, and I'm very pleased that we downgraded our diplomatic relationship after what was very clearly a fraudulent election. But what are the criteria that we use when we look at elections and whether or not that warrants a downgrading of diplomatic relationships or a response versus we know there are a number of elections around the world where, DRC in 2011, and now you've got a president that's overstayed his constitutional mandate. You've got Honduras in November 2017, where the OAS itself said that they can't guarantee elections were transparent. And I could go on through a whole list of different elections that are questionable or not recognized by certain countries. What do we actually look at? Is there a set of criteria? What is the determination whether that warrants a downgrading of our diplomatic relationship?
So that is an excellent question, and it's a difficult question. In the case of Venezuela, you recently had, as we discussed, and the minister was clear on that, the OAS special panel that reported basically that the findings are that we have systematic attack on the civilian population in Venezuela. So this is like crimes against humanity. The report of the OAS will be submitted actually to the prosecutor at the International Criminal Court, which has launched an investigation. So those matters are utterly serious, and this is really like the highest threshold you could have in terms of we need to do something, we need to take actions, and that's why we had we had sanctions, and we took measures such as you mentioned, downranking our relations or diplomatic relations with Venezuela. In the other cases that you mentioned, in Honduras, for example, the government of Canada and the advice we provided was a difficult situation. Nobody will claim that those elections were perfect. There was irregularities that were reported on, but at the end of the day, even the electoral monitoring observation mission that we funded, actually that Canada funded, reported that there were irregularities, but there was not a systematic fraud. Therefore, it was a difficult decision, but we decided, like our partners and European allies in the United States, to recognize the government of Honduras, because even though the elections were not perfect, they were still legitimate. But that's a decision that was not taken lightly, and the minister has been very vocal at explaining that Canada actually expects more and better from the government of Honduras in terms of human rights defenders, and for them in Honduras to have the space to do what they need to do and to protect human rights, and that we actually expect the government of Honduras to reform its electoral system, because some of those recommendations were actually made way back in 2009, and the government didn't act on them, and the last election again were difficult. So there are difficult circumstances, and for each and every one of them, we need to make a clear assessment as to what is the best way forward. Should we recognize the government or not? But in the case of Venezuela, like this is a clear, there's no ambiguity, like we're talking about systematic attack on the civilian population.